Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of the God Cells podcast. I'm Eric Merola. Today is June 2nd, 2021, and I just returned from EmCell for the first time since September of 2019. I received my own therapy while there and did a lot of filming at EmCell. It was my first visit to EmCell's new clinic while filming the sequel to The God Cells, documenting various Americans who are getting fetal stem cell therapy at EmCell for a variety of reasons. For example, I have been following two families with autistic children since 2019 that I documented and will continue to follow up on, who are showing great progress. I filmed an intrathecal procedure, which is when EmCell's doctors inject the fetal neuronal brain cells directly into the spinal canal for a Parkinson's patient who is also showing great progress. I filmed a woman with lung damage who was the first American to receive fetal lung cells inhaled directly into her lungs. A tennis player with various sports injuries, including injured knees, who is already showing great progress. And I filmed every minute of my own therapy, where I even got fetal eye cells injected into my eye sockets. And I will be returning to EmCell July 18 through 24, and again in September of this year to continue production by following more and more patients. But most exciting of all, I filmed and toured EmCell's newest state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind fetal stem cell harvesting, sorting, testing, and storing facility and laboratory. And it's a mind-blower. So much so, I will be releasing an extended edit online of this tour, plus an extended interview with the lead scientist running the show behind the scenes. While there, I met an American who I wasn't planning on documenting, being treated for the first time for multiple sclerosis. His name is Scott, and he is 52 years old, and he's the conversation for today's podcast. While I spent an hour with Scott in his clinic room to meet him in person for the first time, I decided to follow up with him after I returned home, only to have him report fabulous news about his progress. So much so, I asked him if I could call him up and record our conversation for today's podcast. If you are listening to this and want to continue to stay tuned to my future releases of podcasts or new videos I'm releasing, just subscribe to the God Cells YouTube channel, follow me, Eric Merola, or the God Cells on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or sign up to my mailing list at ericmerola.com. That's EricMerola.com. Or if you just want to ask me a question or want to learn more about fetal stem cell therapy, you can always email me at eric@ericmerola.com. Because without meeting new people like yourself shooting me an email after usually seeing my first documentary on this subject, I wouldn't be able to keep track of all of these amazing people I've met and will continue to meet to make these podcasts and new material about this incredibly life-changing, innovative technology. Like Scott today, who emailed me after watching The God Cells and decided to be treated the same week I was in Ukraine this past April. My website is ericmerola.com, and the website for this documentary series is stemcellsmovie.com. I hope you enjoy today's podcast with Scott, discussing his exciting results only a month after receiving his first therapy for multiple sclerosis.
Hey, Eric.
Hey, Scott.
How you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm better than good. Well, I'm normal.
Well, I guess that's a good thing.
Well, it's been a long time since I felt normal. And, since I've been back, people always ask me, well, how do you feel? You know what I mean? They think it's this magic bullet. And I'm like, well, I still have MS, but I feel normal. And, to a lot of people, that's not a big deal. But when I don't stress about getting in and out of the shower or walking up and down stairs, it's a big deal.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of us, including myself, we take for granted the normal feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to explain unless it's kind of been stripped away from you for a while. You don't really... You compensate and you're used to compensating and you're like, well, it's not that bad. It's amazing what, a human being can get used to. But for me, I was at the end, I was like, I got diagnosed after 6 years and with not much fanfare and kind of like, well, here's this drug and it's $70K a year if you want to take it. But it's not going to make you better, and there's a laundry list of side effects.
Right.
So, I'm glad I made the decision that I did.
Remind me, so that's right, you were basically faced with taking this drug, and then you said, okay, and then you decided to go to EmCell. Just remind me sort of the timeline.
Well, I mean, I'd gone to doctors all over the United States, actually, like 17 of them.
Okay.
And none of them would pull the trigger and said that I had MS, even though I had all the symptoms.
Right.
So finally, I did go to an MS specialist, and he said, well, I'm going to say you have primary progressive MS, looking at your charts and everything from the last 6 years. He goes, but you don't really meet the criteria unless we do a spinal tap. And I said to him, I was like, well, if I meet all the criteria except that one, wouldn't you just say it's MS? And he's like, well, and I was like, well, it's a billable service, basically. I already knew I had MS at that point. I was just looking for some kind of confirmation. But meanwhile, while he's telling me that he needs to do the spinal tap, he's handing me these glossy pamphlets for this super expensive drug.
For MS?
Yeah.
The drug that treats specifically MS?
Yeah. Well, it's the only FDA drug approved for people with primary progressive MS, but it's not really for that. It's more for remitting relapsing MS, which I don't have.
Okay.
So, that was kind of like a red flag in my mind. And so I went home and I was like, I'll think about it. But I had been researching stem cells for years before this, like all kinds. There's tons of different kinds, 4 different kinds, and people don't realize that, and they think they're getting a bill of goods that they're not. But, in the United States, all my doctors are in the same hospital, so I have access to their notes whenever I want them.
Mm-hmm.
So I go and I look at the MS specialist's notes, and he's like, patient diagnosed with primary progressive MS. I was like, how can he do that if he said he couldn't without the spinal tap? And then 2 days later, I got like 3 phone calls from different progressive MS studies in my state that he had signed me up for. And I'm all like, I was done with the U.S. medical system at that point in time.
Okay, yeah.
I fired all my doctors. I found new doctors, and funny enough, it's, my new neurologist is from Belarus, and my cardiologist, because I have also a heart issue, is from Eastern Germany.
Okay.
So, and they're both they get why I went to EmCell. My neurologist basically told me, he's like, look, this medicine in America is not going to help you. Mm-hmm. He's like, it's basically them selling you hope, you staying the same and maybe getting worse with, side effects. He's like, go to EmCell. So he was pretty much behind me the whole thing, which is, I can't wait to see him. I see him in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I'm very looking forward to that too. What's the name of this medication that they wanted to give you?
It's the one that's on TV all the time, Ocrevus.
Okay. All right.
I mean, and that's my other issue. It's like, look, if you're spending this much money on commercial ads on TV for, a drug that treats a uncurable disease that isn't a huge part of the population, that should also be a red flag to people, I think. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
It's like I'm watching the Super Bowl and I'm seeing a commercial for MS medicine, and I'm thinking to myself, how many people really have MS or are going to need to take this medication? And if they do have MS, they already know about it.
Yeah.
So the FDA and the American medical system they're not my enemy, so to speak. They do a lot of good, but I feel like they're kind of hamstringed at times.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on for ages about it. Yeah, no, I mean, you're trusting your intuition, and you're a smart guy, and you're seeing all the writing on the wall. Yeah, it goes without saying. Yeah.
It's a lot about capitalism here, and I get that. You know what I mean? I understand people need to make money, but however, it's like, at what cost? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't get rich by curing people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the issue I have.
That's true. It's just that's the way the system is designed. It goes back to my early days of working on these documentaries involving cancer. as an annual annual billable, like bills for a cancer patient is around like a bottom barrel is like $250,000 a year. And then you multiply that times everyone living with cancer right now, it's like $4 trillion across planet Earth. Like just to talk about cancer for a minute. So if you found something that would knock that out, I mean, it would be detrimental to the economy. And your diagnosis is such a small portion of the population, as you said. And there you go. You attach a $70,000 a year price tag to your diagnosis. And how many years would you take that? So 7 times, say 5 years, $350,000 of billable invoices,
Yeah, plus doctors, plus, everything else. And that's why, to me, it was a no-brainer because I did the cost analysis of going to EmCell or, doing this treatment that probably would give me some terrible side effect. I was like, this is a no-brainer. I mean, this is just really common sense. It's not even, I mean, you don't even have to be a doctor or, have to have half a brain to figure it out. And it's weird because my brother-in-law, the reason I live in Alabama, because, I lived in Los Angeles and New York City like you have, I wound up in Alabama. People always say, well, how'd you wind up there? And it's my brother-in-law at the time had stage 4 cancer, and he went to Tennessee and they did HSCT, which is where they take your bone marrow and spin out the stem cells and re-inject it and give you chemo.
Yeah.
And now he's been cancer-free 12 years.
Mm-hmm. What kind of cancer was it, though?
He had lymphatic cancer.
Right. Yeah. Those are actually quite treatable. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, he's been literally cancer free for 12 years by, this, basically they're his own stem cells. So, I mean, that alone was always in the back of my mind. You know what I mean? But, like you said in one of your presentations, you're like, fetal stem cells are like the Cadillac with the horse and buggy surrounding it, basically, of stem cells. When I found out about it, I watched your documentary. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling sorry for myself, whatever. And I started watching it and I was like, huh. And I reached out and you were gracious enough to put me in touch with the right people. And then the pandemic hit. So, I waited it out and I was a little nervous actually, because, Russia was building up their forces on the border and, COVID was in full swing, but I was like, I'm going, this is, and I'm so glad I did. It was a life-changing experience.
I'm happy you did as well. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Your friends must have been like, okay, so let me get this straight, Scott. You got Russian troops on the border, 40,000 troops. You got a global pandemic, and you're going to Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, my friends were just like, but all my friends, most of my friends know the whole deal, and they knew that I was going to go do this, and they were really super supportive. And then, when I got back, everybody called and, it was like, these are our phone conversations. These aren't 5-minute phone conversations. And 2 of my best friends were like, look, there is nobody better than you than standing in a bar with a drink in his hand and a cigarette talking about absolutely nothing. Now you have something to talk about. Go tell the world about this because people have to know.
That's awesome. Wow.
And I was like, I lost some friends actually when I first was telling people that I was going to do this. And I think I'd mentioned that to you that, because of religious beliefs or whatever, they were just like, you can't go do this. And I'm all like, yes, I can. Because if you're not in my situation or your child isn't in this kind of situation, you don't know what you do.
Exactly. Also, too, I mean, I've even interviewed born-again Christians who have had this, who have said, this is what God would have wanted. I mean, this is going to be thrown away anyway. I mean,
that's what I tell people. Yeah. I was like, I got injected with medical waste, basically.
Yeah.
It's a little more complicated than that, but, I mean, in the grand scheme of life, because, some people you really need to dumb things down for.
Right. Right.
For lack of a better word, and I was like, look, this can, in your documentary, there was a gentleman with his son. Mm-hmm. He had brought to EmCell, and he said, if God didn't want me to use this, he wouldn't have made this available. And I was like, exactly. And if that's your belief system, that's fine. I mean, I'm not against religion. I'm not against politics. I'm not against any of that stuff. I don't care. I'm just doing what's best for me personally and trying to share my story so that people in America understand that, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to throw, I mean, I was ready, I'd wake up every morning ready to put a noose around my neck, basically, because I was like, my life wasn't my life anymore. I wasn't recognizing the person I was watching it slowly deteriorate. And it's a horrible feeling.
If you don't mind, since we're on that, Scott, because I know you're experiencing this and you're so close to it right now, but for people listening to this, particularly somebody that might be in your exact position, kind of describe like the last, I don't know, year or so of your life leading up to going, and then this sort of incredibly, it's only been wait, hold on. It's been more than two. How long has it been since we've been there?
No, it'll be 3 weeks on Friday.
3 weeks
my last.
Okay. So we're not even talking about a month, and the doctors generally say wait up to 3 months to start seeing really good results. And I will say, in my experience, speaking to different people like yourself, it's kind of all over the place. Some people will kind of mope around and then 3 months later go, oh my God, something's happening. And then while others have fast results like you do. And it's sort of a big question mark as to why this works so quickly for some and more slowly for others. I can only assume that age and how long you've been diagnosed, all kinds of things can be a factor here. And you being, 52 is still young, Anyway, but give me like the quick, like where you were and where you are now, just for people listening.
Well, I mean, I've had it for 6 years, basically, but it was a year ago that I got diagnosed with, the basic final, hey, this is what you have. And even, you met my girlfriend. I mean, her thing is like, the day you got that diagnosis, your life changed. She's like, you became a different man. And my progression actually sped up because I just wasn't in the mindset. I was like, I'd been through so many doctors and so many, well, it could be this. Well, we don't know. Well, we'll see in 6 months. We'll do a follow-up. And I'm like, I don't have 6 months. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I was pretty miserable, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm so thankful that Lisa, stuck it out, because I was a horrible individual. There was no joy from anything. I was just basically waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd given up, and I was destined to live with this. And then, I saw the documentary, and I'd been doing research about Panama and Germany, but I was like, it's a lot of money. You know what I mean? It's not, in the grand scheme of it, it's not compared to what you would pay for, in co-pays and prescriptions and everything else. It's actually less if you do the math.
And a whole lot less than the $70,000 a year drug they were trying to give you. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, my insurance coverage and, my co-pays and prescriptions. So, yeah, it's way less. So, yeah, I mean, basically, I was miserable up until the time I left. And, just before I left, I was trying to get in the mindset. I was like, this is my shot. I'm going to go and I'm going to do this and be really positive, for the best possible outcome. Mm-hmm. But about 2 weeks before I left, my dad, who's got diabetes, wound up having his leg amputated. I had elderly dogs that were passing away, and, my mind was not, even the whole time in Kiev, I was not in the mindset of this is going to work.
Wow.
I was just kind of there. But the day after my treatment, nothing going on. So we went out and saw the city. And, where my hotel is, near Freedom Square. Yep. I actually had walked up to the monastery up on the hill, which is, a pretty good hike. I went and we walked down to the art walk and the other Gold Dome Church. Mm-hmm. We did the whole art walk. And, the streets are old. They're cobblestone. They're up and down. They're uneven.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I wound up walking like almost 5 miles the day after my last treatment. I hadn't walked 5 miles in one day in years.
Wow.
And my girlfriend looked at me, and I looked at her, and I was like, I wasn't fatigued. I wasn't miserable. I was like, let's go have dinner, and I was just, so at that point, like a switch clicked on, and I'm like, look, this is like less than 12 hours after my last treatment.
Meaning after your second or third day. How many days did you have?
Third, after my third day.
Okay, so 12 hours after your third day. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, this is amazing, and I was like, I was able to bend my knee in a 90-degree, angle to get in and out of a shower, which I hadn't been able to do in years.
Wow.
And I was just like, and I told everybody, if I'm 20% better than when I left, I would be happy. I would say I'm 80 to 85% better than I was. And it's only been 3 weeks.
That's awesome. Okay, so aside from the 90-degree angle with the leg, like getting in and out of the shower, like what are other specific things that are different?
Well, I had, like pins and needles, constant tingling in my hands and feet, completely gone.
Wow.
I would have to wear gloves in the house because my hands were always ice cold.
Okay. Wow.
My body temperature, my feet and hands have been regulated.
Yeah,
I don't have that.
That's great. Yeah. Just by the way, I mean, because of the liver cells, which are the precursors to the bone marrow and the sort of blood system, they almost immediately start building new capillaries, and your cardiovascular system just goes on this therapy. Which makes,
that was the thing, because like they had also injected me with some cardio cells because of my heart issues.
Yep.
Like I had bruising on the bottom of my foot because I had drop foot for so many years and my foot would slam down. All the bruising on the bottom of my foot is gone.
Yeah.
The grinding in my hips is gone. I sleep so much better. I mean, there was one side effect. I had a sty in my eye for about 2 years, and I've taken all kinds of drugs to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. It's completely gone. And if that's the worst side effect, I'll take it.
Wait, okay. Whoa, okay, yes. I have noticed that interesting changes in my eyes, but not like change in my prescription, but my eyes like just become more lubricated and just kind of just feel better. So you had a sty in your eye for 2 years, and how fast did that go away?
It went away in 4 days completely.
Wow, okay, you didn't have the eye socket injections like that? No? Okay.
No. And the weird thing is I wear glasses, and I was reading the other day, and my girlfriend's like, "You can read that?" And I'm like, "Yep."
Wow. I have heard some people say this, like what you just said about reading, but I have not experienced that because I've got horrible prescription eyes. But
yeah, so I mean, like the worst, because everybody's always worried about side effects. That's my biggest thing, because I've had. Well, this is the whole thing. It goes back to like before I was diagnosed. I had a couple heart attacks in 2010, 2011. And, it was pretty devastating at the time. I was a young guy. I was 42. Mm-hmm. And it took me a lot to want to live again after that, because I was just devastated. And I started training to run marathons. Okay. Something I'd never done before. And basically they had switched my cholesterol drug, and I was spending like 7 hours a day at the gym running, stupid amounts of miles. And about 2 weeks after they changed my prescription, I couldn't walk. I woke up one morning and I couldn't walk. So I was like, is this a coincidence, or, what did I change? This is what I changed, this prescription drug. And the side effects is like muscle loss and, joint pain and this, that, and the other thing. And I went to the doctor, and he's like, yeah, we're going to take you off that prescription because that's really common. But then it never got better. And then they said, oh, that's not what it was. You have MS. So I'm all like, who's right? Who's wrong? I don't really believe in coincidences. So, side effects are a big issue for me. And, I did my research at EmCell. They've never had any side effects in like 20 plus years. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute. So yeah, because we are also conditioned, everything like a drug, even sometimes supplements have side effects. So we're so programmed and conditioned to think, what are the side effects? Which is totally a legitimate question. But then when you tell people, no, zero side effects. They just look like they don't think you're telling the truth. And I always say, the worst thing that can happen is you spend the money and absolutely nothing happens. But, the only side effects are all positive. There's just never been a negative side effect to this, because it's just well-honed, humming technology that has been worked on for decades that they've mastered, And by the way, of course, the only bad side effect that could occur is if there was some kind of contamination. But I did an extensive tour of this lab this time around, even more so than from the original documentary, because it's a new lab. Anyway, I'm going to be releasing this in long form. I'll release like an hour-long edit of this whole lab tour. And I watched them talk me through how they test everything. It's all triple tested.
Yes, correct. Not only do they triple test the cells, but before they even do that, they get a blood sample from the donor, and they test it for HIV, hepatitis, you name it. And if anything shows up from the donor, they'll just go, we're not touching this. And even though the material and the blood donor blood comes in at the same time, because they have to act so quickly once the abortion occurs. But yeah, so of course, if the donor is clean, then they'll still test it 3 times, almost like, literally, like you have 3 different sets of people testing it through the same 3, tests. And if they all 3 run clean, then yeah, it's okay to good to go. So so that's why they've never had any issues. So
I mean, you walk in the new clinic, and it's pretty breathtaking. The whole thing, it's like Star Trek or something.
It is. It's like, no.
it's pretty crazy, and it's so clean, and just, I mean, I've been to a lot of hospitals over the past 6 years, and there's nothing I could compare that to at all.
Yeah.
I mean, and even the quality of care and the nurses and the technicians and the translator down to the driver, down to, to my doctor. But I mean, it was just anything I needed explained, or, I mean, she was almost annoyed that I didn't need as much explained because I'd done so much research, And she's like, don't you want, I'm like, no, I'm good. I was like, I've been, researching this for a year because I've been locked in because of the pandemic, you know what I mean? Because I was going to go just before that, and then I was going to go in December, and then, they got locked down again, and it was an issue. And so, as soon as it was open enough that I felt comfortable, I was like, we're going, let's get on the plane and go. And, I'm looking forward. I'm going to actually go back next year and probably, do another round, just depending on where I am in 9 months.
Sure. I mean, clearly I recommend it. I mean, I know it's hard to say that because I know it's not cheap, but I've just done, even me who is healthy, I've done so much work to understand how it works. And each therapy literally, I know you know this, but it literally builds on the last therapy. And I have a long session with their lead scientist, who no one usually ever meets this person because she's busy behind the scenes on the lab side. And she's also the one that's sort of in charge of cherry picking each individual patient's cells because as you know, it's very personalized. Yeah. But she's the one that is sort of like the grand master, fetal stem cell person behind it. Anyway, but I've been having my, because I was one of the early people to have my telomeres tested under what's called the flow cytometer method. It's what it gets it takes a picture of your blood cells so you can actually see the telomere length. It's much more advanced than some of these consumer telomere services in the United States. Not only have my telomeres grown significantly since my first therapy, but the percentage of long telomeres went up like 9-fold. Actually, no, more like 25-fold, like from 0.2% to like 8.5% of the population of my telomeres are long. So the reason I say this is the whole point is, this goes back to you going back. These cells stay in you. And the reason they did this test, and they wanted me to be a part of this study because they knew I was going to keep coming back based on my excitement and passion towards this, is to try to prove that once and for all. So they had like more than a dozen others, local Ukrainians. I was the only American in this sort of study. Anyway, that's all I'm trying to say. So it's like go ahead. Yeah.
I saw a thing that you did with a longevity guru kind of guy.
Yeah.
And it went into that whole telomere thing. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I mean, it's just, in America, it's like, I just want to tell everybody, it's like, I almost want to slap them in the back of the head.
It's tough.
And, and they're like, well, it'll be, I was like, first of all, it's never going to be available here. It's not going to happen. If they ever find a way to make money off of this in America, like stupid amounts of money, it will happen. But the problem is you won't be able to afford it then.
Yeah,
these guys have been doing this for like 25 plus years. With Dr. What's the guy's name from EmCell? The guy that started it.
Well, there's two of them. There's Smigadoop and Karpenko.
I mean, like those two guys invented this thing. That's their lives' work. I've read papers that they've published in medical publications. But in America, nobody knows who these two guys are, and they're like on the cusp of the whole longevity, health, curing uncurable diseases, helping children and people with autism, Parkinson's. I mean, these guys should be Nobel Peace Prize winners.
Sure. Yeah.
But they're like, who? It's like, you have to do your research. I think a lot of people, especially in America, just kind of take their doctor's word for it. And the way I look at it, it's like, look, doctors go to school and they have a basic understanding, but everybody's body's different. And they learn how to write prescriptions. That's what they learn. You know what I mean? It's like they're putting a Band-Aid on a hatchet wound. It doesn't work.
It's kind of how the system is designed. In fact, it's exactly how the system is designed. I mean, there's a certain protocol of education, and the industry is heavily involved in the educational system. I mean, they even sponsor and write most of the textbooks, honestly. And then they get out, and this is what they know. They are delegated to a box they have to work within, and the box works quite well for a lot of people. But when you start to talk to them about this therapy, it's their job to tell you it's a bad idea, even if they understand.
For me, like the doctors, they don't even know. They look at me like, I'm talking a foreign language. They look like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because it is a foreign language to them. It's completely a foreign language to them.
And I'm just like, it's like, look, you've been an MS doctor for 30 years. You should like at least know about this procedure, but you're like completely clueless, and like that doesn't instill confidence in me. You know what I mean? At all. It's like, should I have your job? I can hand out a glossy pamphlet for 70 grand a year and say, well, there's your best bet. Like, my neurologist being from Belarus, his whole thing was like, he knew all about it.
Right.
This was not a foreign language to him, and this is why he's my doctor. You know what I mean? I forego the MS specialist just to have a neurologist who kind of grasps the whole concept. He's like, don't buy the hope they're selling you here. I'm like, but you work here. You know what I mean? But we all have to make a living, so yeah, I get it.
Speaking of doctors, so you're a neurologist that you're going to see him in 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah, the 14th, I believe I see him.
Okay, and how many times have you seen this particular neurologist?
Well, I've seen him 3 times. It's a really weird story because the first time I went to him, he told me I had a vitamin B12 deficiency and I shouldn't cross my legs because it was causing neuropathy, and that's why I was having the problems I was having. And he's like, I'll see, and he gave me a Doppler, where they put the needles in your muscle and your leg and your nerves to conduct nerves.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, look, you have neuropathy. I'll see you in a year. Well, that didn't go over too well with me. Didn't really, Then I talked to my primary care doctor, and she goes, well, maybe you should go back to him. And I went back and saw him, and he's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, you need to go to an MS specialist. Went to the guy, and that was the guy with the shiny brochure and, the whatever, trying to sign me up for all these things, telling me I didn't have the disease because I wouldn't confirm it with a billable service. So, that guy was off out of the chart. Went back to see my neurologist. This would be the 3rd time, and this is when we started to really talk, where he was like getting to know where my mindset was, where I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And he was like, absolutely. He's like, I'm looking forward to it. And he went as far as to say, hey, can you send me the EmCell site? Is there any way I can be in contact with the doctor there so I stay in the loop? So if something does happen, I'm knowledgeable about this, and, I could take care of you. And I was like, this is the doctor I want. That's
great. So let me be clear. The doctor from Belarus is your neurologist?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting guy. I don't really like doctors for the most part because I think they're selling me a bill of goods. Mm-hmm. But he was brutally honest with me, and that's all I asked for. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't tell me if I take this, I'm going to be fine. If I do this, I'm going to be fine, because I'm probably not. Just tell me worst case scenario.
Sure.
Which a lot of people, I'm sure, don't want to know. But, when you have an incurable disease and you make peace with that, what more can somebody tell you that's going to make it worse? You know what I mean? I know. I mean, my idol, one of my biggest musical influences, actually died from progressive MS at like 51 or 52.
Wow.
He's the bass player of the Faces, Ronnie Lane.
Okay.
He had an MS foundation. I mean, he died broke and penniless. Rod Stewart actually paid for his medical upkeep.
Wow.
And in the time he was alive, he did the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. He did the bee stings. He went to Florida and had rattlesnake venom injected in him. Because when you're at that point, you'll pretty much do anything to feel normal. It's not even about feeling good. It's about feeling normal.
Wow. Wow, Scott. This is pretty exciting. Honestly, watching what's going on with you is why I keep doing this. So,
and like I said, it's like one of my oldest, dearest friends was like, he's like, you got to tell people about this, and the guy in my band was like, we have a friend that had a stroke, and, he lost some use of his hand, and he's like, you got to get Mark to go to EmCell, even if it just lifts his spirits up, just he's got to do something because they're not helping him here,
Yeah, I mean, it does really good. Like I said earlier, the cardiovascular side of this is so remarkable. And it also made me really sad to hear about your father getting his leg amputated for diabetes, because this, could still help him.
Prevented it. Yeah, exactly.
Could have, no guarantee, but, it could also still help him from any further damage. But yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, he had actually gotten a scratch on his foot, and it got infected and turned gangrene. That's what had to amputate it.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't. I mean, because he has diabetes, people, they have, they get cuts or whatever. Chances of infection is like tenfold. So, I mean, he didn't treat it properly, and it's really sad. But it could have been avoided.
Yeah. All right, so sort of, I'm going to go back to you for a minute. So you had neuropathy essentially in your hands and feet, plus tingling in the hands and feet, which kind of goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah. And plus, the coldness, that's gone.
Yep, that's awesome. What about just sort of your overall mobility differences? I mean...
Well, here's the weird thing. It's like I told you, after 12 hours after my last treatment, I walked 5 miles, which I hadn't walked that one. But I can get up and down the stairs. I still have a little bit of drop foot, but like when I did the physical therapy at EmCell, and it wasn't anything I didn't know. He was like, look, because you've been walking this way for so long, your muscles have atrophied, and your hip flexors, and the cartilage in your legs and the muscles. He's like, I need to relearn to walk. And, so I got a flash drive with my physical therapy exercises that was made at EmCell, and I watch that, and I do that every day, and it gets better, it does.
That's great. Yeah.
And, I've gone through physical therapy here like 3 or 4 times, because that's like the script they write me. And, I go do it, and it is what it is. And, but the weird thing is when Anatoly, he's one of the physical therapists at EmCell, everything that he showed me was completely opposite of what I learned here in America.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
Because when someone tells you to do an exercise in a therapy, they're looking for the greatest range. You know what I mean? And you want to do it, so you're like tensing your body, you're stressing, and he's all like, what are you doing? He's like, it looks like your head's going to explode. And he's like, no. He goes, if you can't do it, don't do it. He goes, you will be able to do it in time. Make smaller movements, like 1 centimeter, then maybe next week 2 centimeters, but build up at your own pace. Whereas in America, they're just like, move a foot. Or and he's like, no, these are micro movements, and it was like such a different experience than, he was like being so gentle and telling me completely opposite of, he's like, don't stress yourself, don't overexert yourself, he goes, it'll come in time. Whereas in America, it's like mild-mannered, whatever physical therapist is all like, move 2 feet, and I'm just like, oh man, I can't, So yeah, but like it works, and I understand that, you got to do the work, it's like I said, there is no magic bullet.
Sure.
I'm always going to have MS. I understand that. This basically is buying time and helping my quality of life.
Yeah, which is really all the most important thing here, really. And
exactly. Yeah. I feel, like I said, I feel normal, which isn't a big deal. Like, I like myself again, because I didn't like myself for a very long time.
That's awesome, Scott. Wow.
And even like people I talk to have noticed, they're like, you sound different. You're much happier. You're not, doom and gloom. You're more optimistic when it comes to certain things. Whereas I just lost my lust for life, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I was just like, it was kind of sad, and it's hard being in your head when you're like that. So, I'm so thankful that I got this opportunity. I'm glad I saw the God Cell, and I tell everybody to watch that movie. You know what I mean? It's just like, and people are reaching out to me, who through friends of friends who are like, my sister has MS, or, my brother has MS. And I'm like, here, watch this movie. Here's the website to EmCell. Do your research. There's no guarantee, but it is specialized for you. You'll be well taken care of. Kiev's a beautiful place. I was like, make a educated decision. I was like, I have no regrets.
That's awesome. And it goes without saying too, because I'm going to be back there a few more times this year. If you want to share my email, you're welcome to. Just like how you and I met, even though we didn't spend a lot of time with each other, but it's something kind of cool about having sort of a semi-familiar person also there with you,
No, it was great. And I so enjoyed meeting you and your wife and, getting that little bit of time we had to just talk about art. It wasn't even about EmCell. You know what I mean? Because I don't think a lot of people know what an amazing artist you are. I paint, and, you lived in New York. I lived in New York. I lived in LA. You live in Los Angeles. It was very easy to talk to you because I feel like, we're totally different, but we have the same kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Totally. I feel the same way. Yeah.
So, and people were asking me about Kiev, you know what I mean? That's enough about my sickness, People ask me, because a lot of people don't speak English there. I was trying to explain this to my mom, that I was like, being there kind of restored my faith in humanity, if that makes any sense.
You know what? I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Because, like when I lived in Los Angeles, there are people that speak all kinds of languages, just like in New York. And 9 out of 10 times, somebody comes up to you and speaks a different language, and you don't understand them. It's like you light a cigarette and you walk the other way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But there, it's like I thought I was annoying people by not understanding completely what they were saying. But like they're on their phone taking out Google Translator. They're bent over backwards just to try to have some kind of communication. I met a guy on the street walking a dog who actually happened to go to college in London. And, he invited me and Lisa. He's like, I'll show you around. He spoke English. He's like, I know it's hard here because not a lot of people speak English. He goes, I live up the street. He's like, with my mom, I'm off of work this week. I was just like, wow, this is crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like people are genuinely human.
Yeah. No, it is remarkable. Like because I've gone there so often, I've gotten to know a lot of the local like staff from the restaurants. So I'll be gone. I haven't been there in 2 years, and I walked back in for the first time in 2 years, the same trip you were there, and all the same people are there. Like, wow, and they will bend over backwards for you and do any favor for you. And it is. I'm glad you felt the same way. Yeah.
It's remarkable. Like the concierge at our hotel played professional football, soccer in Denver for 4 years. And because his English was so bad, he couldn't get a job. He had to go back and become a concierge at this hotel. And, but I understood what he was saying. And everybody there was so nice. I mean, I got to go around, all around the Medan and, went to the Witch Bar. But I mean, it was amazing how just like warm and genuine these people were, and they wanted to share their history and their culture. And and I've been to a lot of places, it's not like I've been stuck in one state my entire life. I mean, I've traveled pretty extensively through Europe and all across America.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel this way, because this is also kind of the extra bonus about me going back so much. It's not just always, it is always about continuing to film more, and me now working on a second documentary, and of course me getting the therapy or taking a close friend or family member there to get the therapy. But yeah, the experience in Kiev is such an enjoyable one, that it's such a warm, fuzzy, time. And I've been
very Eastern European.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of places too, and my wife is from Poland, so I've been all over Eastern Europe. And I've been to Germany, London, China, Japan. But Kiev still remains as one of my most favorite places to revisit. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah.
But to spend time with the people at EmCell and just to meet you and the people around my hotel and in the restaurants, they were so nice, and it made me realize. Like Lisa had gotten sick when we got back, and I had to take her to the hospital. So I was sitting in the.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was sitting in the hospital with her, and just watching, because that's what I do. It's like I observe stuff, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. I mean, like the doctor came in and like 3 seconds gave her a diagnosis without even basically talking to her and walked out of the room. And I was like, how can you make a conscious diagnosis in 3 seconds? I was like, that's crazy.
It is a weird contrast after spending 3 days at EmCell and then having to end up in an American hospital with Lisa so fast afterwards. It must have been weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but she wants to go back to EmCell because she has that COPD thing, and now they have that new treatment there. So we had talked to them about coming back for her also, for a 2-day treatment.
Yeah. I filmed, I think I told you, I filmed the first, I guess, American probably that had the inhalation therapy of the fetal lung cells. For those listening, your girlfriend basically had like a bit of I guess, some breathing issues because she's missing part of a lung. Is that correct?
She's missing the top lobe of one of her lungs. She has COPD and asthma.
Okay. So anyway, you were telling me, oh my gosh, my girlfriend is not feeling well. Do you know if I can get one of these devices? And I was like, what does she have? And then you explained it all to me. I said, why did you not think about getting her therapy? Because this is perfect. Like, you're sitting here right now in Kiev. Anyway, just for people listening, so they're not confused. But yeah, so I was suggesting that, she would be a great candidate. Their doctors have to first approve this, but for this inhalation therapy of fetal lung cells. But I got to see and speak to the lead scientists about this. So they actually used a 3D printer and built this special device that they use. They did like several different devices till they perfected it. And I filmed the first American using this device, breathing in the fetal lung cells. It's still early to see how she's going to do. But anyway, so yeah, I'll let you know if this woman, I think.
Yeah, because when I go back, at least that's the goal, that we're both going to just deal with what we need to deal with when we're there.
Cool. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it would be fantastic for her because, I mean, it's tough living that way. You don't know if you're going to stop breathing in your sleep and not wake up. She's like, at least this way, I maybe take that fear away.
Sure, maybe. Yeah. I mean,
the mental part of the whole treatment was, I think, bigger than the physical part, at least for me. I mean, mentally, I am so much better than I was. That's I was at the end of my rope, and now I'm looking forward to every day.
Sure.
It did kind of sleep up. Traveling that distance does kind of mess up your sleep cycle for a while, and now I'm back to normal. But I'm better than back to normal because it's like I'm sleeping 7 or 8 hours a night, and I wake up refreshed. I don't feel fatigued. It's not hard for me to get out of bed anymore. I'm sleeping solid because I'm not in any pain, and my feet aren't all weird and restless leg syndrome things gone. I'm actually getting quality sleep for the first time in probably 5 or 6 years.
That's fabulous. That's one of the things, not that I've had difficulty sleeping, but I remember because I'm sleeping a lot better too, because I had the therapy as well, as I sleep so sound without waking up at all. And it's fantastic. Let me ask you a question, because you play an instrument, right?
Yeah, I play guitar.
Okay. So, I mean, you had neuropathy in your hands. So, I mean, have you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's another really weird thing. It's like, I was having trouble because it was my right hand where I hold a pick.
Mm-hmm.
I play, I don't know if you call it punk rock, but like the pick, like I didn't even know it was between my thumb and forefinger. It would fall out. It was very frustrating because I had really no control over my hand whatsoever. But I played guitar for like 2 hours yesterday. Not a problem. I paint, and I had stopped painting, and it's like I started painting as soon as I got home, basically, because I have the control and dexterity of my hand again, which I hadn't had for a pretty long time.
Absolutely. That's super cool, Scott. Because I mean, I'm assuming, because I'm, I paint as well, but I've never played an instrument. But I know if you got good enough at playing an instrument, it's such a big passion and part of your life. And then to be able to have difficulty doing that again at age 52, that must have been hard. And now you're back at it.
That's like goes back to what I was saying. It's like before I went, I was seeing my life deteriorate. I mean, everything I love to do. I love to paint. I love to write. I love to draw. I love to, play instruments. I build instruments. So to have all that taken away from me, it kind of, I wasn't the person I was, you know, it was, the definition of me was just not there anymore.
Sure.
And, you know, it's a miserable feeling to lose yourself, and to watch you lose yourself is even worse, knowing that you are. So this kind of brought back a lot of life for me. I mean, my hand was at like 50%. Now it's at about probably 97%.
That's super cool, Scott. That just makes me so happy to hear.
You know, and I didn't even expect, to be honest, Eric, I didn't expect it to get that, you know, I didn't expect it to be that quick, and I didn't expect it to happen. You know, I thought, well, you know, if it's 10% or 20%, it'll be worth it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or if it stops it from getting worse than what it is the day I left, it would be worth it.
Wow.
But to actually be able to regain, you know, doing the things that I love to do, it's the greatest gift anybody could ever give another human being. I can't, you know, it's kind of like almost being speechless, you know. It's like, I've been talking about this basically nonstop since I've gotten back. Anybody will listen.
So know, like calling you up to do a podcast was like no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, like the guy who took Lisa's blood, and when we were in the hospital, he had to hear the whole story. But then he stopped, and he actually like got out a pen and wrote down the name of your documentary. So it's like, okay, I'm like, go watch this, you know, get educated. And I think that's the biggest problem, at least in America. People just aren't educated. They don't, like, for some reason, they think everything stops at the U.S. border.
Yeah.
And there are so many therapies and doctors and things outside of FDA regulation that do work. You just got to do what's best for you.
Since we're on that again, like, I learned so much more, I gained so much more clarity on why I know that it will really never materialize in the United States. And obviously the first one is the abortion issue. And even in the clinical trials in the US where fetal cells are used in a sort of so-called experimental clinical trial, they use only one cell type. So like, it'll just use only the brain cell or only the heart cell. Well, like you and I got the whole kitchen sink. Like we were given everything, but different levels.
I got a list of all the cells they gave me. I asked them for it.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't normally do this, but we'll give you the list. I mean, it's like 13 different cells. You know what I mean? Or 14 different cells.
But get this. So I'm going to try to make this concise. But in the United States, when they do give fetal cells in a clinical trial that's FDA approved, what they do is they're using a cell that's been replicated from a donor, like from like a decade or 2 decades ago. So they don't need new fetal materials. They just pull from this, a stock of cells that have been sitting there. And what they do is they take the cell in the lab and then they replicate it in the lab to create a lot of them from a small amount. And then they inject it into the patient in an American clinical trial. I was speaking to the lead scientist about this, and she was saying like that this is bad because it's not very effective because you've already exhausted the cell's purpose outside of the human body before injection. And this is also why you hear, yes, we give you so many cc's or millions of cells because we made a lot of them. Well, it doesn't really matter because what you want is the fresh cells injected into the body just in the right amount to then go poof and explode and replication inside of your body. You don't want it done outside and then shoved in. You want it put in and then explode within. So anyway, so just that alone, because that means all new fresh fetal material would be needed on a daily basis. That'll never fly in the US, right there. And then
I mean, the weird thing about it is about a year ago, I was reading an article in a medical journal that said they're trying to make basically faux fetal stem cells. They're trying to figure out how to do this so they can sell them as a therapy. And it's like, well, there's so many abortions that happen in the U.S. regardless a year. Why do you need to make a fake version of it to do the same thing that you already have? And it was basically because they needed to figure out how to sell it.
And patent it. Yeah.
And put a price tag on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It is interesting if you really look closely at it, how the serious stem cell people that are doing the serious research in the U.S., they're all trying to mimic fetal. They're trying to crack that nut, which is kind of impossible unless you just use fetal,
You know, I mean, I used to be a member of a couple MS groups on Facebook, and since I had to leave, like one was a remyelinization using stem cells, which I joined the group because that kind of was an interest for me. And basically, I kind of got into it. You know, I was sharing my EmCell experience, and some lady from like Montana jumped in, and she's like, "You're a baby butcher." I'm like, "Lady," I was like, "You're crazy."
Yeah.
I was like, "This is science. This is like, this can help you. Don't attack me for doing and sharing, my experience."
Yeah.
And she's like, "These are mesenchymal stem cells." And I was like, "Yeah, I know what the mesenchymal stem cell is." And she's like, "Well, you had embryonic stem cells." And I'm like, "No, I didn't. Embryonic stem cells are made in a petri dish." I'm all like, and they cause, benign tumors and can cause cancer. I'm all like, so, don't get into this contest with me because you don't know what you're talking about. Or someone will tell me, "Oh, I had that stem cell and it didn't work." And I'm like, "You didn't have done what I had done. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. This is the only place in the world that this is legal."
Yeah.
And so, it's like a big debate with people. And I'm just like, "Oh, look, I don't want to debate you. This is what I had done. It worked, regardless of what your beliefs are, regardless of whatever, if you want a fighting chance at saving your own life, do your research."
Sure.
I mean, I can't stress enough to people, do your research.
You were one of the ones, Scott, where it's just really just singing for you. It's just humming for you. This is great. I'm really glad to see it.
And the experience alone, just like I can't say enough about the doctors and the staff there and just how they make you feel. And I was like, this is some rock star shit.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I mean, I sorry that I cursed.
No,
but
no.
I mean, that's the only way I can explain it to people. Like all my friends are musicians, so like they get it.
Yeah.
Like I said, at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, I was watching, Prime and, suggested for you, the God Cell. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll watch it.
Oh, that's cool. So you saw it on Amazon Prime, not YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the last movie that Amazon hasn't censored of mine. I'm not joking. They censored 1, 2, 3, 4 of my other movies. I have 5 documentaries. They've censored 4 of them. Yeah, they were on.
You broach some subject matter that, people don't want. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've seen 3 of them. I've seen the Endora Hustle now because it's on YouTube. Yeah. I saw the cancer doctor.
Brzezinski.
The first, Brzezinski, and the God Cell. And I mean, it's some heavy stuff, man. I mean, it kind of goes against the grain. And, but it's like people need to know this. You know what I mean? And I'm all for it. I mean, I love what you do.
Thanks. Yeah. When I find a subject to do something to explore, I first see if anyone's ever touched it, first of all. Because if somebody's already told the story, then why do you need somebody else telling it, So that when I discovered fetal stem cells and I really understood it, I first discovered it in March of 2014, and I spent all of the rest of 2014 researching it. And I didn't turn the camera on until like October 2014 when I started in Mexico. And which, of course, long story short, it led me to Ukraine because I just followed the breadcrumbs and realized, where it all came from. But it was... it's the longest I've spent on any subject. Endora Hustle, like, what a bizarre niche story that is still incredibly fascinating, in my opinion, and relevant to the world as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
But like the God Cell, the weird thing about it is the Mexican clinic. There's a whole lot to that story. I mean, you could do just a story about that.
I know. I really thought about it, but it's just a lot of time and resources to...
Because I actually considered going there, but the guy who started is dead.
Yeah.
The guy who robbed the stem cells from, the Ukraine.
Yeah.
But the thing is he was like a 70s health guru. I mean, that's a story in itself because he was like a pretty big deal in the 70s.
He was, yeah. Yeah.
So, it's a very interesting story, but that clinic still runs.
Yeah, it's really sad. I still get emails sometimes from people that went and then realized later it was a scam. or just like you, or they'll do their research and they will ask them about me, and they basically make up, each story is different, like some nonsensical story about me. Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange. And the fact is, they don't have fetal stem cells anymore. Like, it's not funny.
I mean, he was like cloning them in his kitchen, or he's trying to clone them in his kitchen.
Yeah. But I mean, I went to his house once, and one of his nurses from Mexico, I saw her as a cleaning lady in his house in Malibu.
Yeah. I mean,
it's intense.
But it also goes back to like what that guy was in the 70s. I mean, he was basically like this medical guru guy to the rich and famous.
Yeah, honestly though, because I got to know him really well, he was just a really good con man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because he was a medical doctor, quote unquote, but he never practiced medicine in his life. He was a psychiatrist, and he was just really clever at gaming the system. And because he had like a good con man, good confidence man, he was able to game the system. I mean, he was on Merv Griffin as like the Dr. Oz of his time. He was an affiliate of New York and LA, doing all these kind of like edgy medical news stories, which at the time were kind of cool. And then, he parlayed that when that career because he was then at towards the tail end, he was on like Geraldo and like really started getting into some weird sleazy subjects, and like just kind of like for shock value kind of medical stories that really had no real value. But anyway, that's my opinion. And then he just parlayed that when he found out about EmCell and convinced them, because they were still young in the process of their discovery, because he was this flashy, millionaire TV doctor, and just went in there and steamrolled them and stole their cells and then said, "See ya, thanks," and was charging for cells he stole. And it's incredible. It's just absolutely mind blower. Yeah, you're right. It's documentary.
Story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, you can't make that up.
No.
It's like ID channel stuff.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, it was just absolutely a soap opera. And then there is actually another supposedly fetal stem cell place in the Ukraine, and a friend of mine sent me the link to it, and I'm all like, no, that's not where you want to go. Yeah. See, that's another story. So there's one called Infinity. That is, I'll just tell you this, they do not harvest their own cells. I think they're closed now, though. And then the other one's called UCTC. Now, this is also an interesting story, because UCTC is founded by the son of Smigadoop. And when Smigadoop passed away, the son said, who had no experience with fetal stem cells whatsoever, and just said, I'm taking over my dad's name, and I'm gonna, take over this therapy. And they went, what? No, you're not.
Yeah,
you're not
but it's
doing that
got
at all.
his name on it, and he's the guy that basically pioneered it. So, that's why I told him, I was like, go to EmCell.
His son
that's the place.
Yeah, his son had nothing to do with the pioneering of it. His father did. And so when you look at their website, it says, founded in 1994. And no, that's not true at all. EmCell was founded around then, not UCTC. The son of the founder had nothing to do with this. He just tried to ride the coattails. And like the rest, they don't have the resources or the knowledge to harvest them. It's such an operation. Wait till you see the new footage of you saw the building. So the whole fourth floor is the lab. And each room has its own like circulatory system to avoid cross-contamination. I got to see with my own eyes the actual harvesting. They would not let me film that part. And these people are like essentially in like hazmat suits, harvesting these things. And then I got to witness the testing process, and I got to witness a positive of hepatitis right in front of me. They're like, we got to throw this away. This is hepatitis. And I got to witness that. I got it all on tape. And this thing, you think the clinic looks like Star Trek. Wait till you see the lab.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then there's Swiss Medica too, that promises fetal stem cells until you actually like go to the page and you like do the research, and you're like, no, this is not this.
Wait, who's this? You mean StemMedica?
Swiss Medica. It's called SWISSMEDICA.
Are they in America or in Switzerland?
No, they have actually like 5 clinics throughout the world.
Okay. Well, once you realize that fetal stem cells is not legal on the books in any country on earth except for Ukraine, that just tells you right there that it's not fetal stem cells. I mean, I've done the research on this. Like I try to extensively to find any place in the world that does this, and it doesn't exist. And it just doesn't exist except for Ukraine.
And my big question was, well, how did this come to be? You know what I mean? And then, I did a little more research on it, and it was like, the government was looking for a way to quell, issues.
Well, you know how it came to be, right? in Ukraine?
Well, originally I heard it was because of Chernobyl.
Yeah, that's
but
kind of like how it stemmed, but yeah.
You know, and they didn't really know what they were kind of signing into or signing on for. They just wanted to stop like the birth defects and the horrible effects of the Chernobyl accident.
Well, these guys had already been working on this. They had already realized its potential before Chernobyl. But Chernobyl, because it was such a tragedy and it was such a disaster, and in the Ukraine region, they were kind of right place, right time. All the health regulations were loosened up tremendously. And their very, very first patient they ever treated, which I did kind of briefly show at the end of the God Cells, it was just the family was on Skype. None of them spoke English, had aplastic anemia, which is bone marrow failure, when he was like 7. Because his parents bought radiated milk from a milk farm radiated by Chernobyl. And so he was living off of blood transfusions, waiting for a bone marrow transplant, and they injected this kid with fetal liver cells and cured him.
He's still alive.
Oh, yeah, he has his own wife and kid now. Yeah, his own kid himself, yeah. So, no, it's incredible. He never had any other therapy since then. And this is somebody that was waiting, the only survival chance was bone marrow transplant. Avoided that. So,
I mean, that's a big deal.
So obviously it wasn't hard to convince the Ukraine Ministry of Health because they had more cases and more cases they could present. And then boom, the law was written into place. It was, again, right place, right time. There's just no law in the books anywhere on earth where this is legal. Seriously. So anybody that's
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, this is it. This is the only place on the face of this planet that you can have this done.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And I was like, they've been doing it for a really long time. It's like, and people are like, well, what if it comes to America? And I was like, what you got to realize is even if tomorrow in America, somebody said, okay, we're going to do this, you're already 30 years behind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to be playing catch up forever.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that clinic. I can only imagine what their lab looks like and the brain trust that works there. It's like these people have been doing it for so long and understand it so well that even if it was legal somewhere else, it's like, how do you get people up to speed to understand how this actually works?
My whole point of making these movies is to people like yourself see it, and hopefully it helps.
Isn't there a fetal stem cell committee in California?
Well, it's called CIRM, C-I-R-M. It's not fetal.
Yeah.
It's all stem cells. They're stem cell agnostic, as they say. And I profiled them in my first documentary about this. And I talked to them about fetal. They wouldn't speak to it on camera, but they said, of course we know that's the most powerful one, but it's just off the table in the United States. It's just not an option. So it's not fetal at all. But they're also kind of failing, sadly. It's kind of sad because I think they were all good and well-intended people that got taxpayer money matched by private funding to get a law passed based on a vote to get this thing going, and it's kind of sad because they're
like my doctor said. Stem cells basically are the future of medicine. So like either somebody's got to figure it out or, it's going to continue to be the way it is here. And that's really sad because people are suffering that don't really need to.
Yeah. But the problem is that it's a square peg in a round hole when it comes to stem cells because you're trying to introduce this incredible innovation using biology instead of chemicals to treat ailments when the entire system relies upon the chemical-based, patent-based system to sustain itself. So you can't introduce this new thing, again, square peg, round hole, when you're going to wipe out the existing system.
I have a couple friends in Las Vegas who have MS who are following, my whole journey because everybody's waiting to see what happens with me. You know what I mean?
That's always the case. I've seen this happen so many times, yeah.
And I'm okay with it, and I it's like I tell them, I call them, I said, man, I feel fantastic. I was like, if you can do this, if you can put together the money to do this, do it. It will change your life.
Yeah, if you think about it, not that we even need to go here, but like you saw that building, what would you guess that thing cost? I don't know. I mean, what, $10 million, $20 million?
Easily. So because I know it was a new construction too. I mean, right. From the white marble floors to, it's just stupid crazy, it's off the chain.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's rock star shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny because the day that Lisa didn't go to the clinic with me because she wasn't feeling well, I was sitting in my room, and they don't give you those stupid ass out gowns like they do at the hospital. You got this big fluffy bathrobe and slippers and, everything is like it's like staying at the Four Seasons basically.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there in this room and I'm looking around and I'm all like, how did I get so lucky, for one? And I was like, two, I felt like, I was Axl Rose, or something. I was just like.
You know what's also interesting though, I was on the 4th floor when I saw the cells being harvested. I was told, I said, I can't remember her name, but she said she's been here since the very beginning. She's the lead harvester since the 90s. So they have the same,
wow.
Like worked under Smigadoop, back in those days. Let me ask you a question. Did they give you the injection in the butt?
Yeah, I got 3 of them.
Oh, okay. At least one of them were sort of like specifically for men with a male reproductive, etc.
Yeah.
Did you notice any changes in your libido after you got back?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, just checking. Yeah.
But I mean, those were those deep muscular shots.
Yeah.
They go in pretty far, but I didn't feel any of them.
But I was just curious because we're both guys. Because I guess that's one of the first things. As soon as I got back, I went, here it comes again.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It was funny because the next day, I actually woke up with an erection, which you don't do after you're 25 years old. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was just like. Well,
especially since you had neuropathy, so you're in your hands
and I had narrowing of the blood. I had arterial sclerosis.
Yeah.
But the bruise, like I said, the bruising on my foot, because you have a lot of small blood vessels on your foot, and from slamming it down with drop foot, one side of my foot was almost completely black. Because the blood vessels would break and whatever, and that's gone completely.
Yeah, that's awesome, Scott. That's super awesome. Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, there's not enough. I mean, it should probably be double what they charge. You know what I mean?
You know what? The funny thing is that like the clinics in Panama with subpar cells do charge more than double. I mean, a lot of these other clinics, even in America, they charge way more than what they're charging for subpar stem cell therapies. I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely worth every penny of it. I mean,
Yeah.
And I mean, technically the flight and, the hotel, and I mean, I stayed at a 5-star hotel. It wasn't like I stayed at the Microtel Inn or something, 24-hour room service, kitchen, concierge, whatever you could possibly ever want. There's a pool, a spa, massage, everything in this hotel. It's an amazing hotel. Yeah. It was $455 for 7 days.
Yeah.
For Shattuck.
Wow, they must have lowered their prices tremendously because of COVID.
I mean, I didn't get the balcony room because the balcony room is like almost double what I paid, but I had the room in the back, which was fine because I had a view of the Gold Dome Church.
Yep.
But I mean, it was a king size bed, full wall panel TV, it was gorgeous, marble shower, it was a gorgeous hotel, and I mean, for that price, I was like, really?
I know. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's just like being in any large metropolitan city in Europe, whether you're in Paris or Rome or whatever,
It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. I had a thing about it. I said, like when the bill comes and it's like 15,000 UAH and you start sweating and then you realize, that's like $52.
Yeah, right.
And meanwhile, you've had a bottle of wine and 2 steaks and a shrimp salad and, all this gourmet food. And you're all like, oh, okay.
It's been such a pleasure, Scott. It's, yeah, it's part of the fun too. Doing this is I get to meet a lot of fun new people that we would have normally never met, and it's been a pleasure, that we actually did meet. And who knows, I'd love to stay in touch with you and hear about the neurologist's response, and who knows, we might be there again together next year for all we know.
Absolutely, and keep painting.
Oh, I am.
But your paintings are amazing, don't ever stop doing it.
I'm not going to ever stop doing it. No. That's not going to happen. Yeah. I wish I could have more time to do it. But don't worry. I still have them all over the house. I have an easel downstairs with my table just ready to get at it again. I have 3 pieces I'm working on now. I kind of bounce between pieces,
It's like the cult of Eric Merola, because of the God cells. But I think these people need to know that you're an amazing, accomplished painter.
Thanks.
Because I think people kind of skim over that, and they see you as a director and an advocate for stem cells, and and that's fine in itself. That's amazing enough. But it's like, you're such a talented painter that I think people need to go look at that.
I appreciate that very much. And also, it's interesting on that subject. A lot of people don't realize that I've done 4 other documentaries as well. They just think that this is all I do, and I guess I can see why they would think that. But anyway, yeah.
Well, they should go watch them too, because I've seen 3 out of the 5, I guess, and they're all. It's good stuff. It makes, if nothing else, it'll make you think.
Yeah.
People need to open their minds.
Yeah.
All right, Eric.
All right, buddy. Well, give my best to Lisa. I hope she is doing okay. And let's just stay in touch. WhatsApp me, email me. Just stay in touch. Give me any updates. And,
for sure. Well, enjoy your trip back.
I will. Thank you. And I'll let you know if you're not on my mailing list, or if you don't see me on Facebook or whatever, but I'll be posting after this trip a lot of new footage that I filmed. Because we have YouTube, I'm going to put a lot of footage online in long form, like the whole lab tour, my whole interview with the lead scientist, and stuff like that.
All right, Eric. Have safe travel, man, and I'll talk to you when you get back.
Sounds good, Scott. Awesome. Keep me updated.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Peace.
That was episode 14 of the God Cells podcast. If you or anyone you know listening to this podcast, or watched the God Cells documentary, or any of the material I have released following fetal stem cell technology, and you have a question, you are welcome to email me at eric@ericmerola.com. That's ERIC@ERICMEROLA.com. Definitely email me if you are interested in being in Ukraine for therapy while I am also there this July 18 through 24, or later this September. Who knows? You could end up in my new documentary. But of course, it's not a requirement. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this technology, regardless. Don't forget to follow me and this series on my Eric Merola YouTube channel, the God Cells YouTube channel, as well as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Or just sign up to my mailing list. Until next time, I'm Eric Merola.